away in a somber land, oppressed by a darkling sky. An honest doubt and a searching heart where the way of truth may lie. 'Tis ever the same in flight and life that he who would set a go must pay the price of a loneliness that harrows his very soul. And often the goal itself attained in terms of the gain assured is less of worth to the pilgrim heart than the loneliness endured. For what can he find who seeks beyond that a man is proud to find, compared to the peace of heart he wins, who seeks with an honest mind? Now, that poem, The Airman's World, by the late Gil Rob Wilson, we believe you'll agree is truly a collector's item. We welcome you to this session as United takes another look at several pieces which we regard as being worth an occasional review. Now, for example, here's another collector's item that you may remember fondly. Airplane pioneers Orville and Wilbur Wright were more than taciturn. You see, they hated above all to make speeches, and they avoided speeches if possible. One day at a luncheon attended by a number of inventors, Wilbur Wright was called upon by the toastmaster. "There must be some mistake," stammered Wilbur. "Orville is the one who does the talking." Well, the toastmaster then turned to Orville. The latter stood up and announced, "Wilbur just made the speech." Well, we'll sit down, too, as United presents the musical portion of Collector's Items.
Hello, I'm Dan Calkins, Director of Marketing for Functional Media Incorporated, and I'm not here to make any speeches either. Our sole purpose is to introduce you to our creative programming services. The story you just heard about the Wright brothers is from one of our United Airlines in-flight audio channels. You know, we produce all of the audio in-flight entertainment for both United Airlines and Braniff International. We welcome the opportunity of providing the same unique, top-quality programming for your airline. We've prepared this composite to enable you to hear a cross-section of the original customized programs we create, develop, and produce. First, a brief portion of our classical channel.
United Symphonic Patterns, a program of fine instrumental music presented in the realism of stereo. Verdi's La Forza del Destino, The Force of Destiny, is a 4-act tragedy based upon a play by the Spanish Duke of Rivas. The work was hampered to a certain extent by an extremely involved libretto by Piave, and following the successes of Trovatore and Traviata, the early history of the piece was disappointing. La Forza del Destino had its premiere in St. Petersburg in November of 1862. A revised version was introduced at Milan's La Scala in 1869, and while the overall production has never been one of Verdi's greatest triumphs, the best portions of the opera display some of Verdi's truly fine writing. And the overture, which begins with the ominous suggestion of fate and weaves significant themes from the ensuing drama with its tragic overtones, is a model of dramatic compactness. Carlo Maria Giulini conducts the Philharmonia Orchestra in this performance of Verdi's overture to La Forza del Destino.
We produce 12 60-minute programs for United's jumbo fleet, 8 90-minute programs for their regular jet fleet, and 8 60-minute programs for Braniff's fleet. United's programs are changed every 6 weeks, Braniff's every quarter. We've learned that the motivational type program draws a great many unsolicited testimonials from passengers. Here is a vignette from one such program called A Question of Success.
The Question of Success. Webster defines success as a favorable termination of a venture, specifically the attainment of wealth, favor, or eminence. Now, does happiness usually follow success? There will be many answers to such a question. Here, for example, is what Philophicus in the Dublin, Ireland opinion has to say about happiness. Happiness is pursued under many guises. What is pleasure for one is labor for another. One man enjoys dangerous mountain climbing. The man who accompanies him as a guide must be paid. What one does for love, the other does for money. Walking in the country is a favorite pastime, well thought out by doctors. But the rural postman has to be paid to take a daily walk. The tired businessman enjoys doing a bit of gardening in an evening, but the gardener has to be paid. And if he only comes for an evening, almost has to be bribed. Millionaires seek happiness in piloting their own planes, but plane pilots seek shorter hours and bigger salaries. It would seem that anything for which we are paid ceases to be a pleasure and becomes a labor. The sweat of the brow is unpleasant only when it enables us to eat our bread. And most men sweat more on the golf course than in the office. On the other hand, the fact that most of us work for next to nothing does not seem to improve the position. For most of us, freedom from pain and worry is about as much as we can achieve in our quest for happiness. Richard Evans says happiness involves not letting the things we can't have or don't have or shouldn't have spoil our enjoyment of the things we do have and can have. A great lesson in living is learning to be happy without the things we cannot or ought not to have. Now, most of us would agree, we believe, that the man in this story is a success. And by the way, he's happy, too. Bennett Cerf relates this touching story about a bus. A bus that was bumping along a back road in the South. And in one seat, a wispy old man sat holding a bunch of fresh flowers. Across the aisle was a young girl whose eyes came back again and again to the man's flowers. Well, finally the time came for the old man to get off. And impulsively, he thrust the flowers into the girl's lap. And he explained, "I can see you love them. And I think my wife would like for you to have them. I'll tell her I gave them to you." The girl accepted the flowers and then watched the old man get off that bus and walk through the gate of a small cemetery. John Ruskin wrote, "In order that people may be happy in their work, these three things are needed. They must be fit for it, they must not do too much of it, and they must have a sense of success in it." Albert Einstein was certainly a success, and he always was happy in his work. Einstein's philosophy, 100 times a day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depend on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received and am receiving. Let's continue now with more music. Robert Russell Bennett conducting the orchestra, the London Philharmonic, in fact, Beneath the Southern Cross and the Guadalcanal March from Victory at Sea. The delightful Lejeune Singers with Charles Trenay's La Mer. And then Lawrence Welk, music from out of the Caribbean. Music written by Norman Luboff. A song called Yellowbird.
Now, for those passengers who want to laugh away the cares of the day, we program a comedy channel.
Bill Cosby's sojourn with comedy is devoted to football and baseball. So it's with pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, that we present Mr. Bill Cosby.
The theme is sports. It has to do with guys who have played, guys who wanted to play and couldn't play and didn't play. It covers all these areas because I was all of that. I just want you women to remember one thing. You think you have something that men can do without. It's a lie. Because I will tell you this straight to your face, that a good case of Jock Rash is better than a good woman. I would tell you that now. There are times when we were out on the battlefield and we just kept ourselves from scratching because we knew when we did scratch it was going to be good. Many times I put off scratching for maybe 3-4 days because I knew that when I touched it, I thought, So anytime you women get highfalutin, just think of what is Jock Rash. He won't tell you, because it's so beautiful you can't describe it. Only Fells Napa can wipe it out.
Time for another musical break on United's Patterns in Comedy. And we'll take a break for Walter Wanderley's I'll Do the Samba With You, Mama Cass Elliot with The New World Comin', and Ray Davies with Something Stupid. The best in music on United. Welcome aboard.
Our creative staff is constantly at work developing topics to satisfy a variety of interests. Although we have no rating services such as those available to radio and television stations, we do receive a great number of responses from passengers. We're happy to get that fan mail because it tells us that our programming has been successful and it also inspires us to greater creativity. Recently, we programmed a channel on the subject of retirement. Apparently, we were again on target. United received a number of requests for either the program script or a duplicate tape, together with many complimentary letters. One was from the Dean of Marketing of a large Midwestern university who said, "You know, I enjoy all your United in-flight programs, but Patterns in Retirement has caused me to write you a fan letter. I've been deliberating for some time about when I should retire, and after hearing the program, I've made the decision to retire 2 years earlier than I had previously thought." Many passengers have written to say they enjoy our programs which feature Americana vignettes and Dixieland music. Here is a portion of one of those programs.
United's Patterns in Jazz, the best in Dixieland. And you know, Richard Armour is one of America's most versatile and talented poets and humorists. And we came across one of his efforts in the NEA journal that's called Born Too Soon. It goes like this. When I was a student, I was quiet. I didn't protest, I didn't riot. I wasn't unwashed, I wasn't obscene. I made no demands on Prexy or Dean. I sat in no sit-in, I heckled no speaker. I broke not a window, few students were meeker. I'm forced to admit with some hesitation, all I got out of school was an education. And here's more of that great Dixieland music for you. The Dixie Rebels were back home again in Indiana. Paul Barberin with Sister Kate, Smokey Stover with the story of Hot Lips, and Mr. Clancy Hayes with Toot Toot Tootsie, Goodbye. United's Patterns in Jazz.
Reiterating our policy of programming to all interests, we switch channels, and this is what happens.
Been away too long from my baby's side. Ride, hitching a ride.
Are you ready to chuckle again, huh? Coming up giggle time. Any second now, I would like to reintroduce, as we have earlier in this little session of ours, a good friend of mine, one of the most creative radio broadcasting type producers and comedy creators in America today. Ladies and gentlemen, my very good friend, Dick Orkins, Big Mouths of 1970.
When would you say the pen is mightier than the sword?
When you get up close and stick it in their eye. Oh, come on. All the kids are wearing the unisex look, Mom. I mean, Dad. Mom? Sir Lancelot, you must face your opponent with only this mace.
Uh-huh. What do I do? Just throw the whole can right at him?
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the human mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or by cutting them Indians off at the pass, well...
That's Big Mouths of 1970. Once upon a time, there was a supergroup. Ginger Baker, Steve Winwood, and Eric Clapton. And they were the best at what they did. They were the cream of the crop. Hey, good name for the group. We'll call it Cream.
With black curtains near the station.
We have one consistent policy at FMI, maintaining the highest standards of quality and taste throughout all of our programming, whether it be inspirational, rock, or what have you. We're very proud indeed to have produced the first in-flight program to ever receive the Freedoms Foundation Award. This was the Stars and Stripes, which we programmed for United Airlines last year, and United was awarded a special citation by the Freedoms Foundation. Functional Media Incorporated is headed by John Doremus, who is one of broadcasting's top performers. John currently narrates an NBC radio network series each Saturday on Monitor called The Innovators. His syndicated radio series, The John Doremus Show, is heard across the country on many stations, and he's in constant demand for both radio and television assignments. John narrated several of our in-flight programs and voiced the award-winning Stars and Stripes. Here he is now as we present a portion of Stars and Stripes.
United Airlines presents Stars and Stripes. I was born on July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence is my birth certificate. The bloodlines of the world run in my veins because I offered freedom to the oppressed. I am many things and many people. I am the nation. I am 195 million living souls and the ghost of millions who have lived and died for me. I am Nathan Hale and Paul Revere. I stood at Lexington and fired the shot heard around the world. I'm Washington, Jefferson, and Patrick Henry. I'm John Paul Jones, the Green Mountain Boys, and Davy Crockett. I'm Lee and Grant and Abe Lincoln. I remember the Alamo, the Maine, and Pearl Harbor. When freedom called, I answered and stayed until it was over there. I left my heroic dead in Flanders Fields, on the Rock of Corregidor, on the bleak slopes of Korea, and in the steaming jungle of Vietnam. I am the Brooklyn Bridge, the wheatlands of Kansas, and the granite hills of Vermont. I'm the coal fields of the Virginias and Pennsylvania, the fertile lands of the West, the Golden Gate, and the Grand Canyon. I'm Independence Hall, the Monitor, and the Merrimack. I am big. I sprawl from the Atlantic to the Pacific. My arms reach out to embrace Alaska and Hawaii, 3 million square miles throbbing with industry. I am more than 5 million farms. I am forest, field, mountain, and desert. I am quiet villages and cities that never sleep. You can look at me and see Ben Franklin walking down the streets of Philadelphia with his bread loaf under his arm. You can see the lights of Christmas and hear the strains of Old Lang Syne as the calendar turns. I am Babe Ruth and the World Series. I am 130,000 schools and colleges and 320,000 churches where my people worship God as they think best. I'm a ballad dropped in a box, the roar of a crowd in a stadium and the voice of a choir in a cathedral. I'm an editorial in a newspaper and a letter to a congressman. I'm Eli Whitney and Stephen Foster. I am Tom Edison, Albert Einstein, and Billy Graham. I am Horace Greeley, Will Rogers, and the Wright brothers. I am George Washington Carver, Daniel Webster, and Jonas Salk. I am Longfellow, Walt Whitman, and Thomas Paine. Yes, I am the nation. And these are the things that I am. I was conceived in freedom, and God willing, in freedom I will spend the rest of my days. May I possess always the integrity, the courage, and the strength to keep myself unshackled, to remain a citadel of freedom and a beacon of hope to the world. This is my wish, my goal, my prayer in this year of 1968, 192 years after I was born.
And now I would like to present to you John Doremus, president of Functional Media Incorporated.
We appreciate the privilege of telling our story to you in this brief form. And thank you for taking the time to listen. All of us at Functional Media Incorporated are ready to build an original schedule of programming for you. And we welcome that opportunity. Thank you.